Alright, this is Block 7, The Greatest Generation, Section 5 of the home front, with the section starting with Braceros. For several years, there had been a program between the United States government and the Mexican government in which Mexican migrant workers came across the border into the United States, and they were known as Braceros. Excuse my Spanish, all of you Spanish speakers. And they came across the border to harvest the crops, and they were migrant workers, itinerant workers. They made better money than they did in Mexico, and they often stayed in the United States, whether legally or illegally. During the war, with so many Americans off fighting, lots more Mexicans began to come into the United States to work on the farms that were supplying food for the war effort. And just, you know, as in many cases all around the world, an influx of people who were a little different, especially during the tension of the war years, created a degree of friction. The biggest example of that friction took place in Los Angeles in something that became known as the Zoot Suit Riot. Zoot suits were a fashion statement worn by many young Mexican men. They involved, and here's something of a picture, that gentleman in the middle, big baggy trousers with baggy shirts and suspenders and kind of big loopy coats. It was called a zoot suit. And it was kind of looked down upon by, you know, clean cut, shaven, you know, shirt tucked in to, you know, little, you know, to you know, fitting pants Americans. And they were kind of, you know, mocked by your average American soldier or sailor. And a riot broke out. You know, probably there was alcohol involved in Los Angeles this one night. And a bunch of sailors began kind of stalking around and beating up young Mexicans dressed in these zoot suits. And the army had to be called in to restore order. But incidents like this notwithstanding, throughout the course of World War II, Mexican immigrants and Hispanic immigrants in general started coming to the United States in greater numbers. And throughout the American Southwest, there had always been Spanish-speaking Americans, but during the war their numbers began to grow, and they would not return to Mexico after the war. That made a significant difference. That throughout the late 40s and through the 1950s and beyond, there was a permanent Mexican and Latin American presence in the United States, just kind of waiting to take its spot in the American melting pot.